Hello, welcome to video 4 in our Parts and Aspects series. So far in this series we've explored how to use parts and aspects in our object records. In this final video we'll take everything we've learned to create a more complex multi-part, multi-aspect object record. And we're going to return to the example we used in video 2, which was a tea set comprising a teapot with a lid, a teacup and a saucer. And we can see I've got those parts created on my record now. I've got the teapot here as one part. We've got the lid as a second part, the cup as a third part, and the saucer as a fourth part. And there's also some basic information about everything here, including the whole object name, a brief description of the entire set, and also a title that was assigned by the maker of these items. However, this object record is quite complicated, and that's because we've got a lot going on behind the scenes. So these different parts of our object were made by one person, but they were decorated by different people. So there's quite a complex relationship about who decorated which items, and there's also some variety in object condition. So we're going to use parts and aspects to track this complex information and ensure anyone looking at this record can accurately understand its inventory and catalogue information. This diagram shows the complex relationship our parts have with a series of different people. We can see one artist, Ian Davids, up here at the top. Now Ian made each part, but he also decorated just one side of the teapot, which we'll call side A. The other side of the teapot was decorated by Anika Chowdhury, but Anika also decorated the entirety of our teapot lid and the entirety of the teacup. Finally, a third artist, Claire Tipping, decorated the saucer. So we need to use parts and aspects to create and demonstrate the relationship our parts have with these different people and who decorated what. To make matters more complicated, the condition of our items varies. 3 of the objects, the teapot, the lid and the teacup, are all in good condition, but one object, the saucer, is in poor condition. So again, we need to use aspects to make sure that the saucer and the other objects have the correct conditions recorded against them. So I'm now on the editing form for our object, and it's time to start cataloguing some of that specific information and creating new aspects for our object. Now, as we saw in our diagram earlier, Ian Davids created all the parts for our object. So he made the teapot, the lid, the teacup and the saucer. Now we haven't had to create a new aspect for that because by default all object records have a whole aspect, and that's what we automatically record into unless you change aspects and create new ones. So if I scroll down to the production section, you can see I've already added Ian Davids down here as the maker of our parts. And we know he's the maker of all of our parts because object production person here is applying to the whole aspect. We can see there. And each of our parts, looking at one of 4 here, each of our parts contain and relate to the whole aspect. So if I cycle through them, you can see they've all got whole aspects ticked. So we don't need to do any more for Ian Davids on the making front, but now let's create some aspects and record those decorators. So let's start with the teapot. Now we know from our diagram that teapot was decorated by 2 different people. So what we're calling side A was decorated by Ian Davids, and what we're going to call side B was decorated by Anika Chowdhury. So we need to create an aspect for each side of the teapot so we can catalogue that information accurately. So let's start with side A. I'm going to go to my aspects bar here and click add. And you're going to give your aspect a name that makes sense to you, so teapot side A. Now a few things have happened here. You can see we're now looking at teapot side A, and if we wanted to change back to whole we'd have to go on this menu and click there. We're not actually going to change that though. Also note that the new aspect has appeared here at the top of our parts section, so we can make sure that any of our parts that need to relate to this aspect are ticked. So in this case, certainly the body of the teapot, which is part 1, is going to want a relationship with this aspect. But if we look at the other parts, the teapot lid, the cup, the saucer, none of them have a relationship with that side of the teapot. They don't need to be contained in that aspect. So just the main body of the teapot needs to have a relationship with that aspect. I'm now going to scroll down to the production section and we can record Ian Davids as the decorator in this case. Note that underneath our field name we get a reminder of the aspect below. So a reminder that we're just looking at the teapot side A aspect, and that's why we can't see Ian Davids here anymore, because the previous entry we had for Ian was relating to the whole aspect, and that's currently hidden from us. So I'm going to click add. I click on Ian, he's already there. He's our decorator. And then we've got his information there, and we'll hit save. Okay, now we're going to do the same thing for teapot side B. So we're going to, just as before, give it a new aspect. And again, we're going to set the relationship our aspect has with our parts. So again, in this case, the main body of the teapot is certainly going to be involved with side B as well, but none of our other parts are going to apply. So we've just got those ticked there. And just as before, I'm going to scroll down to our production section and set our different contributor. This time it's Anika. There she is. And I can set her as the decorator for teapot side B. I'll save my changes. So next up we had the teapot lid, which we also need to record the decorating for. And we know that was also done by Anika. So simply going to add a new aspect. And this is just going to be called teapot lid. Or I could just call it lid potentially. But let's go for teapot lid. Now we need to set the relationship between teapot lid and the parts. It's not going to have a relationship with the main teapot body, but it is going to have a relationship with our second part, which is the teapot lid. So we're going to click on that. And again, we're scrolling down to production. There we go, production person. And Anika is going in there as well. So you can see the process I'm going through there with those aspects. I'm now going to do the same with the teacup, because Anika also made the teacup. And I'm going to do the same with the saucer in making an aspect for that as well, and then associating Claire Tipping as the decorator of that. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then we're going to review our results so far. Okay, so I've now gone ahead and I've recorded all of the decorators. So I went ahead and created an aspect for the teacup and an aspect for the saucer, and I assigned decorators to those as well. I'm now looking at my object record, and let's just go through what we can see. And the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to set aspect here to show data for all, and that way we're going to see everything. Now let's review what we can see so far. So in the parts section, I can see we have our first part here. This is our teapot body. We can see that the aspects relating to the teapot body are the whole aspect, teapot side A and teapot side B. We have its number down here. Moving on to the next part, which is the lid, we can see aspects relating to this part is again the whole aspect and also the teapot lid aspect. Again, at part 3, we have the teacup. Aspects containing this part is the whole aspect and the teacup aspect. And then finally, for the fourth part, which is the saucer, the aspects that contain this part are the whole aspect and the saucer aspect. So you can see how the relationships that we set on the edit form are presented here. So it's really clear what aspects relate to each part. If I now scroll down further, we can see we have our production section, and we can see quite clearly who's done what to which aspect. So we have a series of whole aspected pieces of information. So the production dates applying to the whole aspect here, and as we recorded earlier, Ian Davids as the maker of the whole aspect, i.e. all of the parts, the whole record. And then we have a series of aspected pieces of information relating to teapot side A, teapot side B, with different decorators for each side. And then we have a teapot lid aspect with Anika Chowdhury, a teacup aspect again for Anika, and then saucer, which was the artist Claire Tipping in that case. So we can see how all the aspects we've made are kind of contributing together to make that information really clear about who decorated what. However, we haven't just got decorators to record. You might note we also discussed that our objects, our parts here, have different conditions. So 3 of these parts are in good condition, but 1, the saucer, is in poor condition. So again, we're going to use aspects to help us record that information. I have returned to the editing form so we can record that condition information. Now I need to start by creating another aspect because I have teapot aspects for just 2 sides, but I also want an aspect that I can link to the kind of whole of the teapot. So I'm going to click add. I'm going to call just this one teapot. And again, I'm going to set its relationship with part 1 because teapot's aspect is related to our part number 1, which is the teapot body. And now I'm going to go ahead and record the condition against the teapot aspect. So I'm going to go down to condition and technical assessment. I'm going to add a condition. Now we're actually going to grade our conditions. So A is the best condition. And that's a teapot. Now we already have an aspect for the teapot lid. So I'm going to flip to that like so. And again, scroll down. Do condition. Again, now note we're now doing the condition for teapot lid. I'm going to click add. And again, that's A, which is our best condition. And again, save our changes for that. And so on. I'm going to move through and do the teacup. Scrolling down to condition, again, just for teacup now. That's also A, which is our best condition rating. It's important to save before you change aspects because it can refresh aspects of the page. And finally, the saucer, which, as you may remember, was in poor condition. So now we're looking at the saucer aspect. Again, back down to condition, add a condition term for the saucer. And this is going to be, let's say, E, which is really poor condition on our grading system. And we'll save that. And now finally, let's view what we've done. So we've got our object record here with the 4 parts. You can see the numbers at the top. Again, we are reminded that these aspects relate to our teapot, whole, teapot side A, teapot side B, and teapot, and similar information for all of the other parts in this record. And as I scroll down, you can see we're only seeing the whole aspect at this point. But if I again set to show data for all aspects and scroll back down, we can see all that varied production information, series of decorators, but we can use aspects to say exactly what parts and areas of our record they were responsible for. So, we know that the teacup aspect was decorated by Anika Chowdhury, and if the name wasn't clue enough, we can actually scroll up and we can see, yes, the aspect is related to this part here. And so we use that relationship that's set between parts and aspects just to make that really clear. Although obviously a good aspect name can do a lot of work for us as well. And then note the information we've just added here. We've got teapot lid, teacup, saucer and teapot. So we've got four aspects here with a kind of grading against them. And again, we can look at something like this. Grade A condition for the teapot aspect. And again, if the name wasn't obvious enough, we can scroll up and we can go, okay, the teapot aspect is related to this part here and only this part. So we know that this part is in good condition. So that's a quick example of how we can use parts and aspects and set those relationships to maybe describe quite a complex object record, but make it really clear about people or condition of certain areas or parts of that record. What we could go on to do, if we wanted to take this concept further, we could perhaps do something around images with our object. So we could have a group image which has the whole aspect, and then we could just take an image of the teapot without its lid, and that could be assigned to the teapot aspect, and so on and so forth. So again, you could use aspects to assign images in a more focused, clear way. So I hope that's been useful. If you have any questions about using parts and aspects on your system, or you need help with anything else, do let us know, and we're always happy to offer some advice. Thank you very much.